In a world filled with challenges and sacrifices, the love between Ethan and Lena overcomes all obstacles. When she decides to leave for the sake of her family, he refuses to accept losing her. Will love be strong enough to change their fate? Follow this heartfelt story to find out. If you enjoy this content, don't forget to like, share it with your friends and family, and especially subscribe to the channel so you won't miss more meaningful stories. The Caldwell Corporation building rises high in the heart of bustling Manhattan, its glass windows reflecting the faint morning sunlight. In the CEO's office on the top floor, a man is carefully reviewing documents on his desk, his face cold as ice. Ethan Caldwell, 30, is a name that everyone in the financial world fears. He is the chairman and CEO of Caldwell Corporation, a multinational conglomerate worth billions. To the public, Ethan is a business genius, a man capable of turning every deal into gold. To his employees, he is a tyrant, ruthless, and never allows himself or anyone else to make a mistake. Ethan grew up in a wealthy family, but he never relied on inherited wealth. On the contrary, from a young age, he proved he could stand on his own. He took Caldwell Corporation from a family-owned business to a global powerhouse with hundreds of branches and tens of thousands of employees. However, the more successful he became, the more distant he grew from people. He didn't believe in love and didn't trust anyone's loyalty. His life revolved around work, until she came into the picture. Lena Moore is Ethan's personal assistant, a woman whom everyone in the company respects. At 25, she has been working for Ethan for 3 years, becoming his indispensable right hand. Lena came from a poor family in Brooklyn, where she had to take on various jobs since childhood to help her parents. After graduating college with a full scholarship, she struggled to find work in the highly competitive business world. Then, a surprising opportunity came when she was hired as Ethan Caldwell's assistant. This job was no easy feat. Ethan is a hard man to please. No one could tolerate working with him for more than 6 months. His previous assistants all left within a few weeks, unable to bear the enormous pressure he put on them. However, Lena was different. She was not only patient, but also incredibly intelligent. She quickly adapted to Ethan's way of working, learning to understand his needs with just a raised eyebrow or a glance. She worked tirelessly, always showing up exactly when he needed her, always prepared for every detail. Gradually, even though he never said it aloud, Ethan had to admit that Lena was the only one who could keep up with his pace. Today was no different. As the clock struck 7:00 a.m., the office door swung open, and Lena walked in with a hot cup of coffee in hand. "Your coffee, as usual." Her voice was soft but firm. Ethan didn't look up. He simply reached for the cup and took a sip. The familiar bitterness spread across his tongue. He didn't need to ask, didn't need to remind her. Lena always knew exactly what he wanted before he even said it. Today's schedule. She placed a file on his desk and began listing. 8:00 a.m., board meeting. 10:00 a.m., signing contract with St. James Corporation. 1:00 p.m., lunch with Tokyo Partners. 3:00 p.m., review quarterly financial reports. Ethan flipped through the pages, his sharp eyes scanning the numbers quickly. Is there an issue with the St. James contract? They want to renegotiate the profit terms, but I've sent them a better proposal. I've also prepared a persuasive dossier. If they still object, you can use these points. Lena placed another stack of documents in front of him. Ethan nodded in approval, his eyes briefly glancing at her. He couldn't remember the last time he had to handle these things himself. Lena was always there, always knowing exactly what he needed. But recently, something had started to change. Ethan began to feel that her presence was different. He noticed her more, how she tied her hair, how she furrowed her brow when concentrating, or how she smiled when talking to colleagues. He realized that every morning, when she entered with his coffee, he felt an unusual sense of calm, something he had never felt before. And that made him uncomfortable. Ethan didn't like things he couldn't control. He didn't like caring about Lena. She was just an assistant, an employee, someone he paid to work for him. So why did he feel restless when he saw her talking to someone else? Why did he think about her even when he was home? He didn't have the answers. All he knew was that Lena Moore had slowly become an indispensable part of his life, and he didn't even realize it. For as long as Ethan could remember, he had always kept a distance from everyone. He wasn't used to caring about other people's feelings, and had never spent too much time thinking about anyone outside of work. But lately, he realized that he had been paying special attention to Lena in a way he couldn't explain. He found himself staring at her longer than necessary. When she carefully reviewed documents, when she slightly frowned at something that didn't sit right with her, or even when she tied her hair back while busy, those ordinary moments made it hard for him to look away. He also noticed he was finding reasons to keep her around. Before, after work, Ethan would let his assistant leave on time without a second thought. Now, he kept giving Lena extra tasks, asking her to double-check documents, or even asking her to order dinner for him, just to make her stay longer. Lena noticed this too. Lately, Ethan seemed different. He used to communicate with her in short, cold sentences, but now sometimes she felt he hesitated. Sometimes he asked her questions unrelated to work, like, "Did you have lunch? What kind of coffee do you like?" Or even, "You look tired today." These questions seemed simple, but for someone like Ethan Caldwell, who had never cared about anyone outside of work, it was strange. Lena knew her heart had begun to waver in ways it shouldn't. She couldn't deny that Ethan was incredibly attractive. He was not only successful and intelligent, but also had a charmingly handsome, masculine appearance. But what moved her the most wasn't just those things. It was the way he had changed when he was around her. He was no longer the cold, calculating business machine. He had moments of contemplation, moments when his gaze softened in a way that felt unfamiliar. And that was the most frightening part. Lena always reminded herself that there was a gap between them that couldn't be crossed. Ethan was the CEO of a billion-dollar corporation, while she was just a regular assistant, someone who could be replaced at any time. She wasn't allowed to dream. So no matter how strongly her heart beat every time Ethan showed a hint of concern for her, Lena always tried to keep her distance. But then, an event happened that changed everything. Lena had been feeling unwell since the morning, but with such a packed schedule, she hadn't had time to rest. By evening, as she was preparing to leave the office, a sudden dizziness hit her, causing her to stumble, her body losing all strength. As soon as she stepped out of Ethan's office, everything in front of Lena suddenly blurred, then went completely dark. She fainted. When she regained consciousness, Lena realized she was lying in an unfamiliar bed, in a spacious room. The scent of sandalwood gently lingered in the air. It took her a few seconds to realize this was not her home. It was Ethan Caldwell's home. Confused, Lena sat up, but just then, the door opened. Ethan entered, holding a bowl of hot porridge. He was wearing a simple white shirt, sleeves rolled up, revealing his strong arms. But what surprised Lena the most was his gaze. It wasn't as cold as usual. It held a trace of what seemed like worry. "You're awake." Ethan's voice was low, slightly hoarse, as if he had been awake all night. Lena felt flustered. How did I end up here?" "You fainted right outside my office door. If I hadn't caught you in time, you'd probably be in the hospital right now." He set the bowl of porridge down and crossed his arms, looking at her. "Why didn't you tell me you were sick?" Lena lowered her head. "I didn't want to bother you." Ethan let out a soft laugh, but it wasn't mocking like usual. It was more helpless. "Bother me?" he repeated, as if he couldn't believe what he was hearing. "Lena, you've been my assistant for 3 years, taking care of every little detail of my life, and you think me caring about you is a bother?" Lena's heart skipped a beat. She didn't know how to respond. "Eat." Ethan suddenly pushed the bowl of porridge toward her. "You've been asleep since last night, you must be starving." Lena silently took the spoon and scooped up a small bite of porridge. It was still warm. "Did you make this yourself?" she asked, a little surprised. Ethan turned his face away, as if not wanting her to see his expression. "I just followed a recipe online." Lena couldn't help but smile slightly. She never imagined Ethan Caldwell would cook for someone, let alone for her. Suddenly, an unexpected warmth spread through her heart. That whole night, Ethan didn't leave the room. He sat on the nearby sofa, engrossed in documents, but occasionally looked up to check on her. Every time she coughed lightly, he immediately poured water and placed it by her side. Every time she shifted, he glanced over to make sure she was okay. Ethan didn't say much, but his actions spoke volumes, and that night they both realized that there was an undeniable connection between them. Lena knew she shouldn't let her heart wander too far, but when she looked into Ethan Caldwell's rare, soft gaze, she knew it was already too late to turn back. As for Ethan, for the first time in his life, he realized an important truth. He didn't want to lose Lena, but he still wasn't brave enough to say it out loud. After the night Lena fell ill, there was an invisible shift between her and Ethan. Lena felt it every time Ethan looked at her. If before, his gaze had merely passed over her indifferently, like how he treated everyone else, now his look was deeper, making her feel uneasy every time she caught it. She also sensed it every time he deliberately kept her close for various reasons. "Lena, stay a little longer. I need you to review this contract." "Lena, I want you to come with me to the meeting with the partner." "Lena, are you off work? Come have dinner with me." Little by little, Ethan found ways to pull her closer, and Lena couldn't stop herself from responding. Although her mind constantly reminded her of the gap between them, her heart couldn't resist the feelings that grew stronger each day. But what scared her the most was knowing that Ethan was changing too. Lena was packing some documents when Ethan suddenly spoke up. "Are you free tomorrow?" Lena looked up, slightly surprised by the question. Ethan had never asked about her free time unless it was work-related. I'm not sure, but if anything comes up, I'll arrange it." Ethan stood up and walked over to her desk. He removed his tie, revealing his slightly wrinkled shirt collar. Lena rarely saw him in such an imperfect state. "I want you to come with me to a place." "Where?" Ethan didn't answer right away. He stared at her for a long moment, as if weighing something in his mind. Then, his voice was low, but softer than usual. "Just come with me, and you'll see." Lena didn't know what Ethan had planned, but as he drove her to this secluded beach, she started to feel that something was off. The night sea was calm, the gentle breeze brushing past, bringing a cool but pleasant sensation. In front of them, a small beachside restaurant had been reserved by Ethan. It wasn't the lavish kind of place he usually frequented, but rather quiet and strangely private. That whole evening, Ethan didn't mention work. He quietly had dinner with her, occasionally asking very ordinary questions. "Do you prefer living in the city or the countryside? If you weren't my assistant, what do you think you'd be doing?" These questions made Lena smile involuntarily. Ethan Caldwell, the man always busy with numbers and multi-billion-dollar contracts, was now taking an interest in the small things about her. When dinner was over, they walked along the beach. Lena let the sea breeze tousle her hair, her eyes squinting slightly due to the refreshing wind. Ethan walked beside her, his hands in his pockets, but his eyes never left her. "Lena." His voice called her name, steady, but somehow different from usual. She turned to face him, her gaze meeting his deep one. And then Ethan spoke. "You know," he began slowly, as if choosing each word carefully. "I'm not good at expressing emotions, but there's one thing I'm sure of." Lena stood still. She didn't dare to breathe. Ethan stared at her for a long time, then continued. "I never thought I would need anyone in my life." He chuckled softly, but there was no hiding the sincerity in his voice. "But since you came along, everything has changed." The sea breeze tousled Lena's hair, but she didn't mind. She only felt her heart racing faster. Ethan took a deep breath. "I want you to stay by my side, Lena." Those words pierced her heart like an arrow. Ethan Caldwell, the man who once thought love was just a trivial thing, was now confessing to her. But in that moment, Lena's eyes suddenly grew dim, and to Ethan's surprise, she took a step back. "No." Ethan froze. "What?" Lena bit her lip, her eyes filled with pain. "I can't, Ethan." Her voice trembled. "I'm sorry." She turned and walked away. Ethan stood still, unable to believe what had just happened. He had struggled for so long to say those words. He had gathered the courage to face his feelings, only to receive her cold rejection in return. It felt like everything was crashing down. Ethan stood there, watching Lena's figure fade into the distance, his mind consumed by only one question: why? Lena's rejection left Ethan in a dazed state that lasted for days. Although he always appeared strong, his heart felt torn apart by her cold answer. Every time he sat down at his desk, Lena's image would appear in his mind. He couldn't stop thinking about why she had left after he confessed, and the feeling of loss when she suddenly disappeared from his life. Ethan couldn't understand if he had done something wrong. Was there something wrong with his approach? Was it something within him that made Lena walk away? Or was there a deeper reason that he had never considered? Despite all the unanswered questions, he kept searching for Lena, hoping to talk to her and ask for an explanation. But Lena seemed to have vanished from his world. His messages and calls went unanswered. She no longer came to the office, and there were no signs that she planned to return. He had no choice but to accept the painful silence, but that silence only pushed him to find the truth. A week later, on a late afternoon, Ethan decided to make everything clear. He went to Lena's apartment. Even though he knew where she lived, he had never been there, as their relationship had always been strictly professional. But now, the absence of her presence was a pain he couldn't bear anymore. Lena lived in a small apartment, and it seemed she tried to keep things simple and private. He stood in front of her door, his hand trembling slightly as he rang the bell. Everything seemed familiar yet strangely foreign to him. When the door opened, Lena stood there, her long hair falling naturally around her shoulders, her eyes showing signs of exhaustion, as if she had been crying for a long time. "Ethan," she said softly, her voice betraying her surprise. "What are you doing here?" Ethan looked at her, unable to hide the disappointment in his eyes. "Lena, I can't accept you leaving like that. I need to understand why. We deserve to have a clear conversation." Lena hesitated, feeling tense and out of breath. She had thought a lot about this meeting, but now, as she faced Ethan, the conflicting emotions inside her surged. She knew it was time to tell the truth, but her heart didn't want to hurt him. "I'm sorry." She finally sighed, her gaze dropping to the floor. "But I can't continue anymore, Ethan." Ethan didn't say anything else but just stared at her, waiting for an explanation. Lena turned and walked into her apartment. He followed and closed the door behind him. The apartment was small, but every corner bore her mark. The framed pictures on the walls, the old books, and the little trinkets that reflected Lena's simple, shy personality. "Lena, I don't understand," Ethan said, his voice hoarse as he tried to control his emotions. "Can't you tell me the reason? You're the only one who made me feel like I could change. I never thought I'd meet someone like you. Never thought anyone could make me care this deeply. But why did you leave? What was the reason?" Lena stayed silent for a moment. Then she sighed, weary. "Ethan, I can't. It's not that I don't want to stay with you, but I have my reasons." She looked into his eyes, then continued, each word heavy in the air. "My family is in huge debt. I can't let them suffer. That's why I became your assistant in the first place, but this can't go on forever. Everything has to end because I have an arranged engagement to settle my family's financial problems." Ethan was stunned. The story Lena just told was so unexpected that he couldn't believe it. "Engagement?" he repeated, his eyes wide with surprise. "So you have someone else?" Lena lowered her head, her eyes filled with sadness. "It's not like that. But this engagement is the only way for my family to get out of debt. I can't refuse. I have to go." She looked at Ethan, her eyes filled with sorrow. Before you confessed to me, I had already decided to leave. But I didn't expect you to express your feelings at that moment. I didn't want you to get caught up in my family's troubles. Ethan, you don't deserve this." Ethan was speechless. Everything he thought he knew about Lena was turned upside down. She wasn't just a poor assistant like he had thought. She was a strong person, sacrificing herself to save her family. But that didn't stop the pain he felt. He didn't know what to do or how to change the situation. "Lena, I don't care about that," he said, his voice choked. "If that's why you're rejecting me, I won't let it stop us. I want to be with you, to help you. You don't have to be alone." But Lena shook her head, tears beginning to fall. "Ethan, I can't. This is too complicated, too dangerous. I don't want you to be caught up in problems you don't deserve. I have to go." And so, once again, Ethan could only watch Lena leave. The feeling of loss was indescribable, but he understood that, no matter how heartbroken he was, sometimes love wasn't enough to change everything. Ethan couldn't accept this departure. After leaving Lena's apartment, his heart still ached, constantly questioning whether things could change. That night, he lay awake, unable to sleep, his thoughts consumed with her and the reason she had to leave. But in that moment, something inside him ignited, a strong determination he had never felt before. He couldn't let Lena leave without knowing the truth. If she truly loved him, why should she sacrifice her feelings because of an arranged engagement? He couldn't let a strong, resilient woman like Lena live a life she never chose. Ethan wasn't someone who gave up easily, and this time was no different. He was determined to uncover the truth behind everything. After a few days of quiet investigation, he finally uncovered the secret Lena had been hiding. Her family was indeed in massive debt, and her agreeing to an arranged marriage wasn't out of love, but it was the only way to save her family from financial ruin. He knew that if she didn't marry that man, her family would be pushed into an even worse situation. With this information, Ethan didn't hesitate. He started making plans, preparing for the biggest confrontation of his life. He couldn't let Lena continue to live in pain and sacrifice. She deserved to have a happy life, and he, Ethan Caldwell, would be the one to give that to her. Lena had no idea that Ethan had gone to her family's house. That was the day she decided she could no longer go on. The wedding was coming up, and her heart ached every time she thought about leaving everything behind, living in a marriage she never wanted. However, she felt that this was the only way to save her family. Lena stood before the mirror in her pure white wedding dress, gazing at herself amidst the chaos of emotions. She thought of Ethan, of the sweet moments spent with him, the times he had looked at her tenderly, protected her. But then, she had to return to reality. She couldn't let her love destroy everything for her family. And then, in that tense moment, the doorbell rang. Lena never expected that this moment would change everything. When she opened the door, her heart nearly stopped. Ethan stood there, dressed in a sharp black suit, his face serious, but his eyes full of determination. "Ethan, what are you doing here?" Lena asked, her voice trembling. Ethan didn't respond immediately. He stepped into the room, his eyes never leaving her. "Lena, I can't let you marry him. I can't stand by and watch you walk into a marriage you don't love. You deserve to have a happy life, to be loved by someone who truly cares for you, and I will be that person." Lena stepped back, her eyes wide with shock. "What are you saying? I can't stop now, Ethan. I've already made my decision. My family—" "Don't say another word," Ethan interrupted, his voice deep but resolute. "I know everything. Your family is in debt, and you agreed to marry him just to save them, right?" Lena felt a lump in her throat, but she couldn't hide the truth any longer. "Yes, that's why I did it. I can't let them suffer, but I can't be with you, Ethan. I can't let you get caught up in all of this." Ethan took her hand, his gaze unwavering. "No, Lena, I can't let you do this alone. You're not alone in this. Your family won't have to suffer anymore. I will help them, and we won't let this stand in the way of our love." He turned to Lena's family, already having a plan in place to help them escape the massive debt without such a ridiculous sacrifice. Under Ethan's pressure, Lena's family's business partners were persuaded, and in the end, the debt was erased. The engagement between Lena and the man she didn't love was called off. Lena looked at Ethan, tears beginning to fall. "Can you really do it?" "Yes, I will do whatever it takes to be with you. Lena, I love you, and I won't let you go again." Lena couldn't say anything. She could only look into Ethan's eyes, filled with love and resolve. All the fear within her began to fade, replaced by a sense of relief. Ethan's love for her was real, and she could no longer run from her feelings. Finally, Lena turned back to Ethan, her eyes full of emotion. "I love you. I can't deny this love anymore." And in that moment, everything became clear. They didn't need to say anything more. Their love had overcome everything, family barriers, the deep fears in their hearts. They knew that as long as they had each other, everything else would be just another challenge they could face together. Thank you for taking the time to read this story. If you enjoyed it, don't forget to click like, share this story with your friends and family, and subscribe to the channel so you don't miss out on more meaningful stories.